my life is shaped by a lot of events, but one of the most powerful was somebody doing these kind acts for my family. When I was 11 years old, we had a really, really tough Thanksgiving where there was no money and no food, and we wouldn't have starved. We always found a way to get something, but we weren't going to have a Thanksgiving dinner, that's for sure, certainly not a feast of any sort. And my mom and dad at the time were fighting like cats and dogs and saying things that once you say them, you can never take them back. You know the kind of stuff I'm talking about? And my mom was screaming at father about how he couldn't even take care of his own family, and it was horrible. And I have a younger brother and younger sister. I'm the oldest. So I was trying to keep them from hearing this conversation, and then a miracle happened. Bang on the door. I'm the oldest. They're screaming, so I go answer the door. And I answer the door, and standing there is this giant man. I was this little boy. And he's holding this huge box of food. And beside him on the ground was a black pot with an uncooked turkey in it. And he said, "Is your father home?" And I said, "Just one moment." I was like unbelievably euphoric. I thought, this is a gift from God. This is going to change it all. This is going to make my mom and dad happy. It's going to be unbelievable. So I go, and my father is screaming at my mother through a closed door to the bedroom door. And I said, Dad, there's a guy at the door. And he goes, "You answer the door." I said, "I did. He's got to see you." So I kind of teased. I said, "Dad, you got to come." So he said, "Fine." He made one last yell at her, and he walks to the door. And I'm waiting there, just can't waiting to see his face. And my dad opens the door, and this man's standing there with this big box of food. And my father did not get happy. He looked at this man, and he raised his voice to him, and he said, "Look, we don't take charity." And then he took the door to slam it in the man's face. But the man was a good-sized man. He put his foot there and smacked his foot and bounced back over. He said, Sir, this is not charity. Everybody has tough times. Somebody knows you're having a tough time. Circle Thanksgiving. I'm just the delivery guy. He said, "Please take this." And my father said, "We don't take charity." He went to slam it again. And this time the guy put his shoulder against it so he couldn't do it. And then my father's staring at him. It's like these two males starting to get in this intense mode. And one's just trying to give a gift, and I'm freaking. And then the guy said something that I'll never forget, and in moments I wished he hadn't said. But he found a way to force my father. He's holding this thing, and he looked at me, and then he looked at my dad, and he said, "Don't make your family suffer because of your ego." Now my dad's level of energy increased, but he was also trapped. You get it? So he took the food, slammed it on our table, and slammed the door in the man's face and never even thanked him. And I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to cry. Part of me was crushed. And I watched my father storm off and went on back to scream at my mother. And I remember that day just thinking, I don't understand. And years later, I began to understand it a little bit. What I began to understand is that you look at a person's life, and it's like so much in life you could be joyous about. Like I wanted to smile, you know what I mean? Even now I can remember it. I wanted to smile about this great gift, but now I couldn't even smile because it would make him angry. And then I thought, years I figured out, our whole life is shaped by decisions. That's what we've talked about today, right? But there's 3 decisions you're making every moment you're alive. And the way you make these 3 decisions shapes your destiny. First decision we're all making every moment is, what are you going to focus on? What are you going to focus on? And, I realized that my father's life and my life ended up very different because we made that day 3 decisions very differently. He decided to focus on the fact that he has not fed his family. And the second question you got to decide, every moment you're alive, including this moment, what are you going to focus on? Second question is, as you're focusing on, what does this mean? What does it mean? And the bottom line on meaning is, if you think about it, you get to make up the meaning, and most people pick the worst one, don't they? That day, my father decided to focus on the fact he hadn't fed his family, and I know what meaning he gave because he said it out loud over and over again, that he was worthless because he had. And then the final and most important decision you make every moment you're alive, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I'll tell you what he decided to do. He decided to leave our family shortly thereafter, which at the time was the worst experience of my life. It was the most crushing experience I felt. It's been so many years now, I don't have the same feelings. And part of it is 3 years ago he passed away. But at the time, I knew no greater pain. My family knew no greater pain. I couldn't understand why he would leave. I loved him so much. And my life turned out very different than him. I was the only one to go at his funeral. No one else in the family would go. Nobody wanted to be part of it. He died alone of a disease called connective tissue disorder. And I can tell you, right before his death, he got the lesson because he looked at me and he said, son, he said, I was a bastard. I didn't connect with anybody, and look what I'm dying of. It's unbelievable. So that same day, I made 3 different decisions. I decided to focus on the fact there was food. What a concept. I like that. But what changed my life was the meaning I gave it. I decided that day that what this means is that strangers care. And if strangers care about me and my family, I decided what I was going to do is I was going to care about strangers. And that completely changed my life. I promised myself someday I'd do well enough to do this for other families like was done for me. And I didn't wait till I was, wealthy to do it. I did my first one when I was 17. I remembered I was 17, I had my own car, I had some money, and I decided to go on the greatest shopping spree of my life at that point. I decided I was going to go shop for 2 families for Thanksgiving, and I was going to go do for families what was done for me so many years before. It was the most euphoric experience. I took 2 baskets, I went to the manager of the place, I told him what I was going to do, and I said, I want you to give me a discount, you be my partner, give me 10%, cheap bastard. Right? But it was so cool. I got 2 of everything right because I wanted to get enough food for a family for 2 or 3 days and have an unbelievable feast. Then I called this church in the barrio area, and I said, listen, I want to go take care of some families that are too proud to come to the church and get food, so they might suffer. Can you recommend some families? And they gave me 2 families. So then I wrote a note because I thought, you know what, I'm going to put on old jeans and a t-shirt, and I'm going to deliver this. I'm not going to get the acknowledgement, but I do want to see their faces, right? So all goes the delivery boy, which is easy. I look like one. But I wrote this note, and I don't want him to get upset like my father did. So I wrote this note, and I said, this is a gift from a friend. Please know that you're loved. I want you to have an extraordinary Thanksgiving. You deserve it. Please accept this gift. And then I put under it, I said, if you can, someday do well enough to do this for one other family and pass on the gift. And I put love a friend. And then I realized I was going to an area that was more Latino, and I don't speak Spanish, so I thought, I got a friend to write on the back in Spanish so I could flip it around if there was a challenge. So I got one of my buddy's old vans, because I need a little room, put all the groceries in, and I drove to this house. And it was not what I expected, it was more. I got to this house, and I got 2 bags of groceries, and I banged on the door. Door opened, and this woman about this tall, right, stares up at me like this, right? And I said, hi. And it was very obvious she didn't speak any English, and she let out a scream when she saw the food. And by the way, this woman had 5 children and a husband. What I didn't know is the husband had left her 3 days before with no money, no food, and 5 kids. So I got these bags. So she screamed, and she grabbed me and started pulling my neck and like kissing me, right? And I said, no. I said, I'm the delivery boy. And she didn't understand a word I was saying. So I reached in my pocket and I gave her the note, flipped it over. She read it in Spanish, and then she started to bawl. So then she came and started kissing me again. I said, no, I'm the delivery boy. I'm, I'm trying to show her. And she goes, no, gift from God. I said, I'm trying not to bawl. So I'm like, where do I put this? And I'm doing everything. I hold it together, like smiling, but I want to cry. And she just pointed. It wasn't a big house. It's like a room. So I went over and I put the stuff on there. And just as I'm trying to put stuff on there, I hear these screams. And all of a sudden, bam, bam. 2 boys hit me, one leg, then the other. These 2 little guys just tackle me, right? When they saw the food, they went crazy. When I saw the pumpkin pie, it was over. So I said, come out with me. And so they came out, and we kept bringing these groceries in. And I'm telling you, it was like, I don't know how to describe it. It was the most euphoric, fun, passionate, loving. It was like they're my little brothers, And so we brought all stuff in, and they were laughing, and one little boy just wouldn't let go of my leg, and he just kept looking up to me and hugging me, and I was like, but I had to go make the other delivery. So I turned to this woman, I said, I've got to go, And she said, okay, whatever her language was. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it meant okay, right? So I went to go leave, and then she grabbed my arm, and she started to have tears in her eyes. And I said, I wanted to say, Happy Thanksgiving, but I didn't know Spanish, so I went, Feliz Navidad. Figured it was close. you know? And she she went from crying to laughing, right? And then she grabbed and gave me this big hug, and the kids gave me these hugs. And I remember I got out and I walked off, and they were all standing on the porch. And I got in this little van, and I drove it out and I turned it around. And as I went to turn it around, I looked in the rearview mirror, and I was feeling all this emotion building in my body. And I looked in the mirror, and I saw Mama standing in the porch with her kids, all the kids smiling. Mama sitting there crying hysterically and smiling from ear to ear. And I couldn't keep it together. I was right there, stopped in the street, and I started bawling uncontrollably. And I remember just thinking, this is a beautiful thing. Why is this making me cry? And, why is this a great thing? Why am I so emotional about this? And then I got it. I realized in that moment that the worst day of my life, my father leaving, had actually been the best day of my life. Because if I hadn't had that experience, I wouldn't be here today. And now because of that, I get to live this life. And I have the desire and the drive and the want to give in this way. And so I've really realized that the worst day was the best day, that was God's gift. The gift wouldn't have been there if he would have stayed. Here's what it says: thank God for unanswered prayers. It's a story about this man who wants his prayer and finds out later on it wasn't fulfilled, right? So I tell you the story for a couple reasons. One is, if you want to change your life, figure out how your worst day was your best day. You'll change everything, because it is if you look for it. If you find the deeper meaning, it is. There's something in you that wouldn't be there without it. And the second reason is because I want to recruit your soul. Not for your money or business. I want to recruit you in this action of going and making a difference. I want to recruit you for you, because I know if you go do a few of these things, you'll get hooked, and you'll make it a ritual, and it'll change your life. Whatever things you do in your life, this is what it's really about. And, it won't be long before it'll be Thanksgiving here, and we still do this. I started out the first year, I fed 2 families, and the next year I fed 4. I'm going to double it. Next year I did 8, which was a lot of work. And I didn't tell anybody what I was doing, because I wasn't doing it for acknowledgement. I was doing it because it was right. But after a while, I thought I could use some help. So I got my friends together and said, you know what? Instead of just going and having turkey, let's give thanks. Let's go build baskets with food and great stuff, and let's deliver it to people. Then we'll come in and have a big dinner, and we'll talk about what we're grateful for and have our dinner. And so we did it, and it became a ritual, and it grew. And then I built some companies, and all my employees got involved. And then about 14, 15 years ago, I started my foundation. And last year, we fed over 1 million people now in 9 countries around the world, on Christmas and Thanksgiving. It's been a pretty amazing experience, right? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I thank you for your applause. I wasn't telling you for that reason. I want to recruit you. And you can give your money, but I'd much prefer if you would just go deliver the food. Because I'll tell you what's great. You'll be changed by that. It's easy to give money. But when you enter an environment and you give, you don't give as the giver. You go as the delivery person, but you're really the one that made it. It'll absolutely change your life.
Hi, I'm Tony Robbins. Listen, right now there's a debate raging in this country, especially in an election year, and it's a debate about how to solve the economic problems that we're all now facing. We've spent beyond our means for decades as a nation, and now we're getting to a tipping point, one that's so significant and one that's so dangerous that even the S&P acted to lower our sovereign credit rating for the first time in history. I think we all know that politicians, whether they be congressmen or senators or even presidents of the United States, whether they be on the right or the left, they tend to promote whatever supports their ideology, whatever they believe in, or unfortunately, whatever will get them elected or maybe reelected. But if you're independent in your thinking, the raw and real facts, the data, the simple facts can be extremely helpful in answering this big current political debate, which is how do we become solvent once again as a nation? Can we get there just by raising taxes on, quote, millionaires and billionaires? Can we truly cover all our expenses by just soaking the rich? Or do we have to, as painful as it might sound, find a way to cut some of our expenses, even the difficult ones? Liberals say tax the rich and that'll do it. Conservatives say that'll destroy the economy and you have to cut expenses. Common sense, I think, says that we have to do both. Wouldn't you agree? Well, regardless of your political point of view, I think this quick video will give you a really cool perspective on the size of our economic challenge by demonstrating, based on this year's expenses, what our current Congress and the President has set up for 2012, what will it take in taxes to cover it all? What would it take? If we taxed all the richest corporations, the richest people, will it cover it, or how much more would we need? I think the answer might really blow your mind. So let's talk about these numbers, 1 million, 1 billion, and 1 trillion. I mean, you see these numbers being thrown around every day of our lives, and you hear the numbers like 1 trillion today. You never hear 1 million when you talk about the federal government. It's always billions and trillions are often discussed over pizza today. So how much is 1 million versus 1 billion? Our minds kind of go numb. One way to do it is to convert into something that you can relate to, like seconds. If I asked you, how long ago was 1 million seconds ago, what would your first gut reaction be? Don't try to think in your head, just in your gut. What's inside you? 1 million seconds, would that be a day ago, 1 million seconds ago, a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago? What would you guess? The answer is 12 days ago. 1 million seconds was 12 days ago. Now, on the other hand, what would you say 1 billion seconds ago was? Well, again, if it's 12 days for 1 million, what would 1 billion seconds come up to? How far back would we have to go to get to 1 billion seconds so we get a sense of proportion? Well, some people might say, well, if it's 12 days for 1 million, maybe it's a year or 10 years or 20 years. No, in fact, it's 32 years to get to 1 billion seconds ago. It'd be 1980. To give you a perspective, President Carter was the President of the United States at that time. We had movies like The Shining or The Empire Strikes Back. In Iran, they had Americans hostage, if you remember that. Some conflicts, I guess, don't change no matter how long you go back. So that's the difference, 12 days versus 32 years, 1 million versus 1 billion. But the number we hear thrown around these days by politicians is $1 trillion. And the truth is we have $15.4 trillion in deficit in this country. And that doesn't count the unfunded liabilities that come from Medicare and Social Security, which some statistics show that it's up to $117 trillion. So how long would 1 trillion seconds ago have been? Again, 1 million is 12 days ago, 1 billion, 32 years ago. What would you think 1 trillion would be? 500 years? 1,000 years? The answer is 32,000 years, just short of 32,000 years. And to give you an idea, that's when man wasn't even known as man. When Homo sapiens, were in a very rare and unique form a long, long time ago. So that's 1 trillion, not 15 trillion. To give you some other sense of perspective, if you made $1 million every day, you earned $1 million every single day of your life, and you start in the time of Jesus Christ's birth, and every single day you made $1 million up to 2012, you wouldn't have even gotten close to earning $1 trillion. It would take you almost another 1,000 years to get to that number. And we're talking about 15 trillion in deficit, and we're talking about, or debt I should say, and we're talking about a situation with 117 trillion of unfunded liabilities. I'll just give you one more metaphor, an accurate one. If you took the 15 trillion that we owe, and you made it into dollar bills, and you put them end to end, side to side, you could cover every single highway and every country road in America 2 times over with literally dollar bills. It's such a staggering number, it's beyond imagination. And yet people throw these numbers around because people don't make much of a difference in their mind between 1 million and 1 billion. In fact, over 2 centuries, from the time of George Washington's administration all the way to the end of the Reagan administration, the US accumulated a total debt of $2.2 trillion. Now today you might just say just 2.2 trillion, because here's what'll blow your mind. In the last 24 months alone, between August 2009 and August 2011, we've created an additional debt of $2.95 trillion, almost 3 trillion that we've accumulated literally in 2 years, more than it took us to accumulate in 200 of the previous years of all the American administrations. So now you get a chance to appreciate some hard work that comes from just one dedicated blogger taking the time to spell out for you in plain English what the issues really are. When I was looking online, trying to find ways to be able to show you a visual way to see quickly what the deficit is, or I should say what this year's spending is going to be and how we're going to meet it, I came across this blog by this man named Iowa Hawk, who is more of a conservative. I'm more independent, so I'm not going to use his inflammatory language, but what he did a damn good job of, and our research team went and did additional research on, is coming up with the real numbers. And this is his format. So I'm going to pretty much take what he got and put it out in his blog and make it more visual for you in this video. So I want to thank you, Iowa Hawk, in advance for putting this brilliant information out. And you can find Iowa Hawk at iowahawk.typepad.com if you want to read his material. But be aware that he's more conservative in his personal approach. So he's a bit inflammatory if you're more independent or if you're more liberal in your approach. So I also want to thank my research team, because Iowa Hawk did this in 2010 for the 2011 budget, and we've gone through and done all the research my team has to give you the 2012 numbers. So these are the current numbers. So let's begin. Let's look at some basic research and try and figure out, how do we actually pay for this $379 trillion that President Obama and this Congress have planned to spend in 2012? By the way, that's $10.4 billion a day that we got to live on. Just think about it. America has to live on $10 billion a day, and we're borrowing more than $4 billion of that every single day just to stay afloat. So let's start with a calendar, and let's start at 12:01 a.m., January 1st. Now, according to Iowa Hawk, the only thing more evil to a liberal than a rich person is a rich corporation. So he takes those two corporations that he thinks most people that are liberal consider to be the most evil, which is ExxonMobil and Walmart, and he says, forget the high taxes. Let's just take every single penny of their combined 2011 global profits. That's $46.7 billion. Now, if we spend all of their profits, it only gets us from midnight on January 1st to 12:45 p.m. on January 5th. That's after taking the profits, all of them, global profits, the two largest corporations in the world. So that's not too impressive. So he starts to say, let's look at this deeper. Let's take every single penny of profit, every penny that comes from the other 498 companies on the Fortune 500, all of it. That's $567 billion, and that still just gets us to 12:15 a.m. on February 29th, my birthday, leap year. Now, obviously, this isn't getting us where we need to go. We've taken every dime of profit from the big Fortune 500 companies, and it's a few weeks after the Super Bowl, so what do? Maybe we go back and we just grab all the corporate advertising, all that was spent, which was $200 million. That'll run the country for about 28 minutes. But why stop there? Let's take all of the ad money, all the 46 years of Super Bowls. That totals $5.2 billion. If somehow we could have a retroactive tax and get all 46 years of all the money ever spent, we'd still only be able to get to 12:15 p.m. on the same day, February 29th. Look, it's obvious that we're not just getting where we want to go, so we can't just go off the backs of corporations. So Iowa Hawk says, let's really go after what liberal politicians are asking. Let's soak those rich people. And we're going to do it by going after, let's start with, let's say, the athletes. They get these obscene sports salaries, and they're not really adding any value. So let's just take all of their salaries from both the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, not their endorsement deals, but all of their salaries. And let's also take the winnings of the PGA Tour and the money spent on NASCAR, put it all together. And that's $10.1 billion. Now I want you to remember, it takes $10.4 billion just to fund the country every day. So we don't even get a day out of it. Basically, it gets us to 11:35 a.m. on the next day, March 1st. After all this, we basically funded the country for 2 months. So look, forget the athletes. Take all their money, but that's obviously not going to be enough, so let's get to all the really rich people. Let's take 100% of every penny that anyone who makes above, say, $250,000 a year, certainly that'll take care of all of our financial needs for the country for at least a year, won't it? Let's see. According to the Census Bureau, the U.S. Census Bureau, the number of households, U.S. households that are at that number, there's 117.5 million. The percentage of those households that make over $250,000 a year now in that income range is almost 2%. but let's round it up to 2%. And let's take that number and find out what it is. So that number of households really above $250,000 in income right now is 2,350,716 households. The total income, check this out, from all those households that make over $250,000 a year is a total of $1.363 trillion. Now we're talking, right? Iowa Hawk says, let's just eat the rich. Let's take everything they got, everything that anyone makes over $250,000 a year, and let's see where that really gets us. It gets us from March 1st at 1 p.m. to July 10th, on 1 p.m. on July 10th, I should say. Now, where do we go from here? We've taxed the richest people in the world, the richest corporations in the world. Look, obviously, we're going to have to really cut some spending somewhere. Well, why don't we just stop spending money on, the wars in Iraq and in Afghanistan? I think there are a lot of us that would love to see that happen. After all, that money is going away to things that could be used for healthcare, or is it just being used really on wars for oil? So let's not spend another dime starting tomorrow. Let's just somehow cut it all off instantaneously, and let's all bring them all home right now. Many people would support that. That, if we somehow could magically do it, would save us $117 billion this year in 2012. That's enough savings basically to cover us until 8 p.m. on July 21st. Listen, who else can we tax that's living too well? Because after all, we need more money. We got to pay our bills here in the US. So Iowa Hawk says this, screw you, Star Wars. We're going to take every penny that you made in movies and toys and lunch boxes, the whole shebang. It took you 35 years for your $26.6 billion, and we're going to come up with some retroactive tax, and we're going to take it all. How much of a difference would that really make in paying our bills? Well, it'll knock us all the way down to 9:20 a.m. on July 24th. Well, look, everyone knows those Hollywood people. They only employ rich actors and producers and directors, and they all live in Beverly Hills. So let's evict everyone in Beverly Hills. Let's confiscate their home, and let's sell all their homes at market value. Look, there's 15,000 homes in Beverly Hills. The average price, $3.2 million. That'll get us $48 billion paying our bills through July 29th of this year. Still in July. Obviously, this isn't working. So Iowa Hawk says, look, Michael Moore assures us that there's plenty of money out there, and it's all tied up with the rich. So guess what, liberal billionaires Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, he says, tough luck for you. His suggestion, you guys are worth $100 billion between the two of you. Maybe it's time for an accidental fall down the stairs. And through the inheritance tax, we will magically keep 50% of that loot, and that'll give us $50 billion to help pay our bills. How far will that get us this year? Well, really, if we killed them both off and took half of everything they have, it gets us to 7 p.m. on August 2nd of this year. All right, look, let's get serious. There's 398 more billionaires in America, according to the latest Forbes 400, with a combined total net worth of $1.4 trillion. He says if we can just arrange a few more hundred accidents at 50% death tax, kill them all off, take all their estate money, and we'll have another $700 billion. But even still, after killing all the US billionaires and all the jobs and opportunities they create, it helps us pay our bills only till 2 a.m. on October 9th of this year. We're still not even to pay our bills for the entire year. Okay, let's forget this mamby-pamby 50% nonsense, he says. Kill all the billionaires and forget 50%, forget their heirs. Take all of their money, all of it. They're all crooks anyway. Take everything and take, well, let's say the 100 or so other almost billionaires. Take everything they've got as well. And that just gets us another 32 days until 12:30 a.m. on November 10th. Well, that's the start of the holiday season, isn't it? So let's pull a little Grinch and let's take all the sales from all the holiday shopping that's expected this year, a whopping $469 billion. That should hold us over till 12:55 p.m. on December 25th. Merry Christmas, everyone. We're almost there. Now remember, this money is for America's poor, so in the spirit of Christmas, let's get rid of all that foreign aid, those dying children, AIDS, all those things that we're trying to make a difference with. Let's get rid of all that. It's $53.3 billion. Let's keep it for ourselves. That gets us until 3:55 p.m. on December 30th. So I'm sorry, but we've still got a date and a little change to pay for. So to cover the remaining $13.8 billion, we're gonna have to hit up every single man, woman, and child in America for $44 each to keep America intact and pay our bills for that final 32 hours of our year, which of course finally gets us to 12 o'clock, January 1st, 2013. Happy New Year, everybody. But what happens next? You see, we've taken all the profits and all the salaries and all the assets and the expenses and the revenues and the holdings of the rich and those corporations, and we've liquidated them. So what happens when you kill off the golden goose? There's no more golden eggs. There's no more profits. There's no more revenues that are available for tax and thus fund our government. What are we going to do? Yet President Obama and our Congress, meanwhile, they're proposing we spend another $3.8 trillion in 2013. And somehow, magically, we're going to spend even more, but he projects somehow that our deficit will be smaller, that somehow our revenues will grow this year. He projected that in 2012, and it wasn't true. Same numbers. He said we'd have a $900 billion deficit. In reality, it's going to be $1.3 trillion, being off by 30, 35, 40%, whatever that number may be. That assumes, by the way, $2.9 trillion in revenues. But where are you going to get revenues from when you kill off all of the possibilities, all of the private enterprise? See, we've destroyed the private capital, we've destroyed advertising revenues, we've destroyed professional sports, we've taken every penny that people have put into new businesses to pay for things, and it's all gone. We ate the rich. We ate everything they had, and we scraped through for 1 year. Now what do we do? Something to think about. I hope this video stimulates you to think about what solutions are. I'm not suggesting we can only cut spending. We're going to have to raise revenues as well, I believe. But what do you believe is what really matters? And how will you use your voice to educate other people, or maybe use your vote to make a difference in the world that we live in, where people think about a million, a billion, and trillion as numbers instead of lives, instead of decisions, hard decisions we've got to make. I hope this has been stimulating, and I'd be interested to hear your feedback. All the best to you. Live strong and live with passion. I'm Tony Robbins. And what you want to do is train a new one. So starting when I was 17, I started doing incantations, not affirmations. Affirmation, you go, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy. What's the problem? You haven't changed your what? Your what? Physiology. If you don't change your physiology, you won't get anything. So an incantation is not only you speak it, but you embody what you're saying with all the intensity you can. And you do it with enough repetitions that it sticks in your head. Like It's a Small World, now the conversation in your head is always the same and it gives you what you want. So you use your body and your voice. So 17 years ago, I started doing things. I was working for Jim Rohn, this speaker, and I was 17 years old. I had long hair, minestrone soup, acne on my face. And I was trying to call on Bear Stearns type of people and convince them why they should go to this man's seminar and be more successful. I was driving a 1968 Volkswagen that I had earned at $40 a week as a janitor. The only way I did it was park far from the building and then go in, and I love people and I believe, but I put myself in state, and I was able to influence people that were far more successful than I was at the time. I would do something that I still do backstage and have done for 23 years because I don't hope I'm going to be in a good state, I demand it. So I do an incantation using my whole body. I'd say, I now command my subconscious mind to direct me in helping as many people as possible alive today to better their lives by giving me the strength, the emotion, the persuasion, the humor, the brevity, whatever it takes to show these people and get these people to change their lives now. And I would do that literally driving in my Volkswagen to a meeting in LA on the freeway for 40 minutes. People were looking at me, I'm screaming at the top of my lungs. They're going, I know he's a serial killer, I know he is. But by the time I entered that room, when two people meet, if there's rapport, the person who's most certain will always influence the other person. And I was totally certain, and they were trying to get revved up to certainty. Do you agree with this? Yes or no? I do another one because I was poor. I changed my mindset. I kept doing things, but I never got beyond it. I'd say God's wealth is circulating in my life. His wealth flows to me in avalanches of abundance. All my needs, desires, and goals are met instantaneously by infinite intelligence, for I'm one with God and God is everything. And I would imagine the abundance of my life, and I would feel so grateful.
And a year later, I went from making $38,000 a year to making $1 million a year in 1 year. But successful people do what failures won't. You follow me on this? You know?